A little while ago, I met up with my friend Patrick to buy a truck from him, and I'll show you guys the truck at the end of this video, show you all about it. But today, we're focusing on a different truck, because he brought me back, because he just bought this old Kenworth Cabover, and it has a good old mechanical Cat 3406B, which is a legendary engine back in its day. We'll make sure the oil's good, the fuel's good, the engine will rotate over, then we'll just hook batteries up to it and see if we can get fuel flowing where it needs to be, and see if this thing will fire off after sitting for so long. We did check the oil. Looks really clean. It's black and looks like diesel oil, but there's no glitter or anything to it, no moisture. And we did just faintly see an old registration year of 2005, so seems like this truck has maybe been sitting for a full 20 years actually. We brought his LMTV truck over to use the crane on the back to lift this cab up until it could rest on the cab lock support and give us more room to work with. Now he mainly bought it for these air ride axles, but the rest of the truck ain't too bad. I mean, this cab is super clean, not rotted at all. Engine, it's probably all original, has like 891,000 miles on it, so it's probably near the end of its service life, but let's see if we can still get it running. Interior is a bit gutted, but still pretty clean. And the truck overall is just missing just enough parts to where it's not quite worth rebuilding as is. So he's going to kind of part it out and use it for other projects. So if you're interested in this cab or the engine by chance, go ahead and let me know in the comments so I can put you in touch with them. All right, I got a breaker bar on one of the front dampener bolts. I'll throw some leverage on it, see if this thing will spin over. Oh, it was subtle. I don't have a lot of movement, but I'm trying to bite it again. Yep, yeah, it moved. Good. All right. The engine was acting like it was locked up, but seems like it just barely locked up for sitting for 10 years, but was able to break it free, so it's rotating freely now. So it's worth hooking some batteries up to it and see how fast we can get it to turn over. All right, taking off this old fuel filter. We'll pump a new one in. Gotta help out this old injection pump by filling this filter with some ATF. All right, with these old mechanical engines, you really only need power to your fuel shutoff solenoid right here, and then power to your starter. So with this one, I can click to here, and that turns on the fuel. And then if I give power to this one, which is hooked up to the starter down below, I'm thinking it might try to bump the engine over. All right, that sounded promising. This fuel tank had an open port, so we don't trust the that's clean fuel. It's probably really old fuel too, maybe with water. So we're running out of this jerry can. So that's our fuel pickup and our return line. All right, everything's hooked up, and we're just gonna start turning it over and see if we can get fuel pumping through this thing. No fuel flow yet. Try to work this primer a little bit. All right, the fuel lift pump's moving fuel, but it's still taking a while to get it all primed through the injection pump. And we don't want to run our batteries too dry, so we got PJ over here working a can of starting fluid. We'll see if we can get the engine to kick on that and stay alive enough for the fuel to work all the way through the injection system. I guess I'll wave you off. Once I get fuel to these fuel lines, yeah, I'll have you stop. Okay. How much were you spitting in there? Just little spurts. Tiny bit. Yeah, these engines are so high compression that you might really knock on it. I just put as little as possible. Okay. Yeah. All right, we're letting these batteries charge up for a sec, but in the meantime, have something really cool to show you guys, and I'm seeing it for the first time too. This is another truck he has, and right there is a giant air tank that we just charged up, because this engine has an air powered starter instead of electric. So feel free to fire it off when you're ready. There's a big Cam Cummins in there. It's trying to go. I've only ever seen air starters on video, so it's my first time in person witnessing one. How about that? Alright, the deal with this solenoid is when you give it power, it sucks in. So I think what our issue was when that sucked in, whatever it's pushing against is not pulling back with it. So that might have been what was preventing fuel from flowing to our injectors. So I was able to get in there and pick that piece back. So now I'll see the fuel's flowing. Well, here's the update, folks. We're not going to have a running engine here today. The reason being, as you can see in there, you got that shaft. That's your fuel rack. So that goes and governs the fuel that passes through the individual plungers. And that rack is supposed to slide back and forth to adjust how much fuel is able to go to the injectors. So the shut-off solenoid was in that port, and it would push the rack that way to shut off fuel and kill the engine, and when you gave it power, it would pull back, and that's supposed to allow the rack to come back with it and then be able to be controlled by your governor here with your throttle. However, it's super seized. I mean, we pulled this port off and we were able to pry on it and pry with all our might until we thought we were about to bend the thing, and it still wasn't freeing up. So it is very common for the injection pumps on these engines to seize up just like that when they've sat for a long time. And basically the only solution is a full injection pump rebuild, where you pull it all apart. And maybe there's some components in there that can be freed back up, or maybe there's components in there that just need replaced all entirely. So with these B model cats, you tend to get 1,000,000 miles out of them and 1,000,000 miles out of the injection pump too. And by that point, it's time to rebuild both of them, the engine and the injection pump. So that's probably what this engine's good for. It's just a great core to rebuild, but it would need a rebuild injection pump. And with how many miles is on it, the rest of the engine should be rebuilt too, probably. And then it could be a really great engine again. Before today, since that rack will not travel, it will not let fuel to continue on to our injection line here. So if there's no fuel going to the cylinders, it's not gonna fire off. So we got beat today. But at least that air-powered girl over there saved the day for at least some cool engine firing up. All right, welcome to the Appalachian Woods at night, where the bugs are super loud, but the temperatures are nice and cool, for us to do a bunch of heavy-duty metal fab work. Now, just because we struck out on getting that Cabover running, doesn't mean we can't have plenty of fun with trucks and trailers in the rest of this video. First, I need to fabricate some repairs to my trailer so that I can take my Ford Cabover to pick up the new truck that I mentioned in the beginning of this video that I bought from Patrick. Alright, here's the trailer I have right now. Back when I was in the market for a step deck trailer, I didn't have that big of a budget to work with. So I bought the cheapest one I could find. So this one was the cheapest one on Facebook Marketplace, so I brought it home. But once I got it home, I realized why it was such a cheap trailer. Because once I got it home, I removed these deck boards so I could inspect this apron area. And it was full of a bunch of dirt and whatnot, and that held a lot of moisture, which caused a lot of this area, the apron, and the cross members supporting it, to have a lot of rust. And things weren't completely rotted away. It was still structural enough to be roadworthy. So I was comfortable taking it on a few hauls, and I just kept a close eye on things up here. But now that I have some time to devote to it, figured let's go ahead and really address it and really spruce things up where it needs to be. Because this whole trailer's rusty, but the rest of the trailer is all just surface rust. Everything else is structural. It was only up here at the apron where metal was starting to get a little thinner. So I chopped all of it out, and then I cut out a fresh square of metal to use as our apron, and then a whole bunch of new cross members and whatnot is all going to be fresh steel up here. Even this piece holding together these two frame rails is going to be chopped out and replaced. I'm just leaving it here for now to keep these frame rails kind of held where they need to be until we get some structure back into here. Here's the kingpin from the old plate. I went ahead and cut it out because it's not worn at all. It's actually still good. And it also had this giant piece of 3/8 steel welded to the top of it. So I'm going to reuse the kingpin and that steel because this chunk is still good to go, and we'll tie it into all our other new steel. So I don't know, I probably could have just left it alone and it would have been fine. Obviously it was putting in the work and hauling loads fine, but I already had all the steel laying around, so figured we'd spruce things up here and have more peace of mind going down the road. I'm using the plasma cutter to cut out this hole in the middle of the new apron for the kingpin to slide out the bottom but weld to the top of this plate. Alright, here's my new apron plate. Get it set up in here, at least try to. I'm adjusting this pipe stand up now, and that'll hold our plate up against these frame rails. Alright, this new apron plate is welded in all along both of these inside edges, as well as these bottom edges too. So it's not going to go anywhere. So it's never going to detach from the rest of this trailer. And now it's just time to run a bunch of cross members over top of it to make it really strong and rigid. Alrighty, my kingpin is tacked in there, so now it's time to add all the webbing pieces. Here's piece number one. It goes in like this. Take my little right angle magnet. That'll set it nice and upright. It's right where it needs to be. Let's do a little tack. That one's tacked in. And this next piece goes in the front. Just like that. This magnet in here. Some tacks for a friend here. Good grief, that's gross. What's this thing's deal? Alright, now for these fun pieces, it goes like this. Now I'm standing on a step ladder. Now let's make sure it's perfectly where I want it. Alrighty, it's right where I want it. Now for attack. Now same thing for the other side. Yeah, there's some beautiful blind tacks for sure. As you can also see, these middle triangles tie all the way to the top of these I-beam frame rails. So I'll tie all of this together, keep it from twisting, make it real solid up here. So now it is 3:43 a.m. so I think I'm gonna go to bed and weld this out tomorrow. Alright, that webbing is welded on in there, tied in all over the place. That kingpin welded in there solid, so this ain't going anywhere. My little homemade fume extractor hooked up to a vacuum cleaner, worked like a charm. So now, next step is to chop here, chop there, get this old crappy piece out of the way. And then I got another piece over there. It's going to be a whole new front face right here. So let's get that welded in. Oh, one other thing to mention. I have these little weep holes right there for water to travel through. So I can travel all out and drain out the back edge of this. So water won't pull up in there. I'll have some drain holes in the front too. So if the trailer's leaning forward, it can drain out that way. Yeah, buddy. All right, the whole front plate's in. And that's it. That's it for the structure of this thing. Pretty pleased with how all that turned out. It is a stronger design than what the stock design was, so shouldn't go anywhere. I had put some used aluminum wheels on my semi before the last trip I took it on, but one of those wheels was worn out enough to lose its grip on its tire, and the tire blew off while I was going down the highway in a very comedic fashion, and rolled off into the field next to me. That caused me to lose faith in my aluminum rims, so I swapped my Falcon tires back onto some trusty steel rims, and now I'm mounting them to my semi before this next trip. Taking the truck for a little test drive. is an Oshkosh MTVR Mark 25 7-ton that weighs about 30,000 pounds and is powered by a 12-liter Cat C12 engine. I intend to tear this truck down for parts to repurpose all its components into a new custom vehicle I'll build in the future.